strength recognizes strength in every arena of life, whether it's politics, business, sports, or personal relationships. Those who stand tall command attention. When someone demonstrates confidence, courage, and the ability to make bold moves, others can't help but take notice. It's not arrogance, it's presence. The world has always been shaped by individuals and nations that refuse to shrink in the face of pressure. The moment you project unwavering certainty in your values and decisions, people begin to adjust themselves around you rather than the other way around. History proves this truth over and over again. Leaders who bowed to pressure or hesitation were forgotten, but those who carried themselves with undeniable authority left an imprint that lasted generations. Think of moments when someone underestimated another, only to be silenced by an overwhelming response. That's not coincidence. It's a law of human behavior. The energy you put out into the world is the energy that comes back to you. When you show strength, others are forced to meet you on that level or step aside. This dynamic also applies to personal life. If you walk into a room uncertain, apologizing for your presence, you'll be treated as secondary. But when you step in grounded, unshaken, and sure of your worth, the atmosphere shifts. People instinctively give space to those who believe in themselves. The same principle fuels nations, companies, and movements. Respect is not handed out freely. It's drawn from the way one carries power, not in domination, but in conviction. Of course, there's a difference between raw aggression and disciplined strength. Power that is reckless burns out fast, but power that is steady, controlled, and purposeful becomes unshakable. When someone demonstrates the ability to strike, yet chooses wisely when and how, that's when true respect is earned. It's not about constant conflict. It's about presence, influence, and the ability to remind the world, we will not be moved. When confronted with challenges, the response you choose determines whether you rise or shrink. The world does not admire hesitation. It admires those who answer back with authority. Even opponents begin to acknowledge those who refuse to bend. Enemies often become allies when they realize the person or nation they opposed cannot be intimidated. What begins as confrontation often transforms into respect. The same applies to personal challenges. When life tests you, when critics throw doubt at you, when circumstances try to break you, your response defines the level of respect you will receive. If you retreat, you teach the world that you can be pushed around. But if you stand strong, if you meet force with equal or greater force, you show that you are not to be underestimated. In the end, respect is never requested, it is commanded. And it is commanded not by words alone, but by the consistent demonstration of strength, resilience, and certainty. People may not agree with you, but they will not ignore you, because when real strength stands tall, the world has no choice but to recognize it. Every person, every community, every nation carries within them a sense of identity, deep-rooted pride in who they are, what they stand for, and the legacy that has shaped them. This identity is not something fragile. It is forged through generations of struggle, triumph, sacrifice, and survival. It carries stories, traditions, values, and a shared spirit that no outside force can belittle. When someone tries to demean or challenge that essence, the reaction is not silence, it is fire. Because what defines people at their core cannot simply be erased with words or attacks. Throughout history, countless attempts have been made to diminish the dignity of groups and nations. Yet time has shown that whenever pride is struck, resilience awakens. You can wound the body, you can challenge resources, but when you aim at the heart of identity, you trigger an unstoppable force. People unite, voices grow louder, and strength multiplies. That unity is not born out of convenience. It's born out of the refusal to let anyone dictate worth or diminish dignity. On a personal level, the same principle applies. Think of a moment when someone questioned your capabilities or underestimated you. At first, it may sting, but then Something deeper rises within the refusal to be defined by another's judgment. That spark pushes people to rise, to work harder, to prove through action that no insult can define their reality. Identity is a shield, and it grows stronger when tested. At the level of nations, it becomes even more powerful. Borders, flags, languages, and cultures carry symbolic weight. They remind people not just of where they are, but of where they've come from. When external forces try to undermine that, it only strengthens the bond among citizens. The very attempt to insult becomes the fuel for greater unity. Instead of breaking apart, identity pulls people closer together, binding them with the invisible threads of belonging. It's also important to understand that true identity does not depend on validation from outside. It doesn't matter who tries to mock, criticize, or belittle. Dignity remains untouchable because it is not given by others. It is inherited, lived, and owned from within. That's why insults often backfire. They attempt to shake confidence, but instead they awaken resilience. They were meant to divide, but instead they unite. When individuals or nations embody this truth, they stop reacting with insecurity and begin responding with strength. They no longer waste energy trying to prove themselves worthy to the world. Instead, they demonstrate worth through their achievements, their consistency, and their refusal to bend. That's why identity endures. It's not a mask worn for show. It's the soul that cannot be stripped away. No force in history has ever succeeded in permanently erasing identity. Empires have risen and fallen, ideologies have clashed and dissolved, but the spirit of people, their language, their culture, their pride, has always resurfaced. The attempt to insult identity may feel sharp in the moment, but over time it only strengthens resolve. Because what defines us cannot be destroyed by words. It can only be reinforced by our response. Nothing in this world happens in isolation. Every move you make, every word you speak, every choice you commit to set something in motion. Life is a series of cause and effect moments, and whether we realize it or not, each step sends ripples outward. Some ripples are small, barely noticed, while others grow into waves that reshape entire landscapes. The principle is simple. You cannot throw energy into the world without it coming back in some form. The way you act today builds the consequences you will meet tomorrow. In history, this pattern is undeniable. When leaders take bold stands, nations respond, sometimes with resistance, sometimes with admiration, but always with a shift. When movements rise, they do so because individuals dared to act, knowing their efforts would spark something larger than themselves. Entire revolutions, cultural shifts, and technological breakthroughs have emerged because someone understood that taking even a single action could ignite an unstoppable chain reaction. It is the very fuel of progress and change. On a personal level, the same truth applies. If you invest your time in discipline, health, and growth, the reaction is strength, confidence, and opportunity. If you choose laziness, excuses, or fear, the reaction is stagnation, regret, and missed chances. Life doesn't hand out rewards or punishments at random. It responds to what you put in. Success doesn't happen by accident. It is the reaction to consistent effort, resilience, and courage. Likewise, failure is rarely sudden. It is the cumulative effect of neglect, avoidance, or wrong choices. It's also a reminder of responsibility. Every action doesn't just affect you. It impacts those around you. Words spoken in anger can break trust, while words spoken in encouragement can lift someone for a lifetime. A single act of courage can inspire hundreds, while a single act of betrayal can shatter bonds. We often underestimate the reach of our actions, but the truth is, they carry much farther than we imagine. What feels small in the moment may become the spark that changes an entire story. There's power in realizing this principle, because it gives you control. If you know that what you put out will return, then you have the ability to shape your future. It's no longer about waiting for luck or chance. It's about deliberately choosing actions that create the reactions you want to see. Focus on growth and growth will respond. Focus on destruction and destruction will eventually find its way back to you. When forces collide on a larger scale, between individuals, companies, or nations, the same rule applies. Challenges, threats, or pressures never exist in a vacuum. Push hard enough against someone's boundaries, and they will push back harder. Try to diminish their strength, and you may awaken their greatest resolve. The balance of power, the ebb and flow of history, all rests on this chain of actions and responses. Understanding this isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Once you realize nothing goes unanswered, you begin to move with greater intention. You begin to see that each step you take is not wasted. It's setting off a sequence that will return to you in ways you may not yet see. And when you act with vision, courage, and conviction, the reaction that comes back is not just survival, it's transformation. True leadership has never been about following the easy path or bowing to what is comfortable. It emerges in the moments when uncertainty is highest, when risks are real, and when standing firm could cost everything. Leaders are not remembered for agreeing with the majority or blending into the crowd. They are remembered because they had the boldness to take a stand when others stayed silent. Courage, not conformity, separates those who leave a mark from those who simply pass through history unnoticed. In every era, the individuals who changed the direction of their people or their nations were the ones who refused to be bound by fear. They were not reckless, but they were willing to face danger, criticism, and even failure to honor their vision. Compliance would have kept them safe, but safety never builds legacy. Safety keeps you small. It is the willingness to risk, to step into the unknown, to take action despite trembling hands, that defines true leadership. Consider how easy it is to comply with expectations. The world constantly pressures people to play by its rules, to avoid rocking the boat, to stay inside the lines. But leaders know that progress has never come from blind agreement. The greatest breakthroughs in science, culture, politics, and human rights came because someone dared to break away from the accepted script. They understood that obedience may win temporary peace, but only courage wins lasting respect. This principle applies not only on the grand stage, but also in everyday life. A parent leading a family, a teacher guiding students, an entrepreneur building a vision, all of them face moments where compliance is tempting. It's easier to go along with what others expect, to play small, to silence your true voice. But the moment you choose courage instead, you inspire others. By stepping into discomfort, you give others permission to rise too. Leadership is not just about making decisions. It's about showing others what's possible when fear doesn't dictate the outcome. The paradox is that people often crave leaders who reassure them, but they respect leaders who challenge them. A compliant leader may win approval in the short term, but in the long term, they lose trust because people sense the lack of backbone. On the other hand, a courageous leader may face criticism initially, but their boldness earns lasting respect. People don't follow weakness. They follow strength, conviction, and authenticity. Courage in leadership doesn't always mean charging into battle or making grand gestures. Sometimes it means speaking an uncomfortable truth in a room full of silence. Sometimes it means standing alone against overwhelming opposition. Sometimes it means admitting a mistake openly rather than covering it up. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear dictate the terms of action. The legacy of any leader is measured not by how well they obeyed the status quo, but by how boldly they created a new reality. Compliance is forgettable, courage is unforgettable. When the dust settles, people don't remember those who simply followed the rules. They remember those who stood firm when it mattered most, those who embodied conviction, and those who lit a path for others to walk behind. Respect is never given freely. It is forged in the moments when one is tested. It's easy to admire someone when everything is calm, when no opposition exists, when life flows without resistance. But real respect emerges when storms hit and pressure rises. The world does not measure character in comfort. It measures it in conflict. How you respond when challenged determines how deeply others value you. Throughout history, the individuals and nations that commanded the greatest respect were those that stood firm in the face of opposition. They didn't retreat when criticized, they didn't fold under pressure, and they didn't shrink when someone tried to push them aside. Instead, they leaned into the confrontation and showed strength, clarity, and resolve. Opponents may not have liked them, but they could not ignore them. That is the essence of respect, not universal approval, but undeniable recognition. This principle carries over into daily life. In personal relationships, respect grows when boundaries are defended. If you allow others to walk over you, you teach them to take advantage of you. But when you stand your ground with dignity and strength, even those who disagree with you will acknowledge your resolve. The same applies in the workplace, in business, and in leadership. People don't admire those who always say yes. They admire those who have the courage to say no when it matters. Confrontation is not about aggression, it's about clarity. It's about declaring, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and I will not bend. The strongest bonds, whether between individuals or entire nations, are built not in the absence of conflict, but in how conflict is handled. True respect doesn't come from avoiding disagreement. It comes from showing strength, fairness, and courage within it. Even adversaries recognize authenticity. History shows us countless examples of rivals who, despite their opposition, respected each other because both sides refused to back down. That respect became the foundation for eventual cooperation, treaties, or even alliances. Without the confrontation, there would have been no mutual acknowledgement of strength. Weakness never commands admiration. Only resilience does. On a personal growth level, the same truth holds. Life will confront you with obstacles, setbacks, and critics. Each of those moments is an invitation to earn respect, not by complaining or retreating, but by rising with determination. The people who inspire us most are not those who never faced opposition, but those who faced it and refused to crumble. Their courage under fire is what makes their story powerful. Ultimately, respect is not a matter of popularity. It's not about being liked by everyone. It's about being recognized as someone who cannot be broken, someone who cannot be silenced, someone who cannot be ignored. When confrontation comes, and it always does, it becomes the proving ground for who you are. Those who meet it with strength write their names into memory. Those who avoid it fade into the background. Respect lasts because it is earned in fire, not comfort. It is the reward for standing tall when others would have bowed, for speaking truth when silence was safer, and for holding firm when the world tried to push you down. When decisions are made on the world stage, they are rarely just about the moment. What looks like a political maneuver today becomes a chapter in history tomorrow. Every choice, every stand, every refusal to bow down carries weight beyond the immediate headlines. What people often miss is that actions in leadership are not simply about winning arguments, securing votes, or scoring temporary advantages. They are about defining how future generations will remember you. Politics is temporary. Leaders rise and fall, parties change, alliances shift, but legacy endures. The true measure of any decision lies in whether it shapes a future worth remembering. When someone acts out of short-term convenience, their choices vanish as quickly as the news cycle. But when they act with vision, courage, and conviction, their names are etched into the story of humanity. Greatness is never measured in terms of election cycles or approval ratings. It is measured in the echoes that last decades, even centuries. History offers us countless lessons. There are leaders who compromised for comfort, who sought safety instead of vision. Their names are forgotten, their impact erased. Then there are those who dared to rise above politics, who thought not just about the present, but about what their actions would mean for generations to come. These are the figures we still study, quote, and honor. Their legacy did not come from playing it safe. It came from embracing the weight of responsibility and acting as if the eyes of the future were watching. In personal life, the same principle applies. The choices we make are not only about us, they are about the ripple effects we leave behind. A parent's courage becomes a child's foundation. A teacher's integrity shapes countless lives. An entrepreneur's vision creates opportunities that outlive them. Every person, no matter their role, has the chance to build something that lasts beyond their own lifetime. The question is whether we will settle for convenience or rise to create impact. The power of legacy lies in its permanence. Politics ends when a term ends, but legacy begins when the term is over. It is the difference between being remembered as someone who filled a position and someone who fulfilled a purpose. The world does not remember office holders, it remembers history makers. That's why the greatest decisions are often the hardest. They demand sacrifice, courage, and the willingness to face criticism in the present for the sake of honor in the future. Leaders who choose this path know they may not be celebrated immediately. In fact, they are often resisted, attacked, or doubted. But over time, truth rises, and history redefines them not as troublemakers, but as visionaries. Every act of courage, every refusal to bow, every stand for dignity and pride plants a seed. That seed grows into the story that future generations will tell. And when the dust of temporary politics has long settled, what remains is the legacy, proof that the struggle, the confrontation, and the sacrifice were never just about now. They were about forever.